Hello, everyone, and welcome to PrecisePoint. PrecisePoint is a podcast that helps us delve into business topics, policy topics, and let us know how they affect us as Nigerians. My name is Tobechukwu Isaac, and I'm your host. And on today's episode, we are talking about fuel. Fuel is expensive. Fuel is very expensive, and that's a conversation we want to have today. And to enable us have that conversation and make sure that we have it in a way that we understand all we need to know, I have a guest here with me. His name is Mr. Frank Uzuegbunam, and he is an ex-energy editor at BusinessDay, and he's also the executive producer of Intercreatives. So yes, help me welcome my guest. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you. Fuel is okay. Before we get into the fuel conversation for today, we quickly want to talk about two other. It's not more like a touch on because these are also things that affect us as Nigerians. Recently, we saw that the interest rate for loans has been increased in the country. Some actually, I think my major question here would be the news said that it had been increased by 0.50%. 0.50% is not a lot in terms of like the regular man's calculation. It's not like it increased by 10%. Okay, it didn't increase by 0.50%, it increased by 0.50. So for example, let's say it was 10 before, it's now 10.50, which is like 10 naira 50 kobo or something like that. But that's very small by most people's, but I don't think business people will have the same view on that. So just like in 1 minute, how significant is 0.50?
Yeah, I think we don't have to look at it in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at it in isolation, you might say it's minute. But
Yeah.
considering the plethora of problems, considering
Why
the
did you say plethora of problems?
of recent, Nigerians businesses have been going through a lot. There
Yeah.
has been a great inflation.
Mm.
The inflation has jumped up.
Yeah.
So any little increase, even if it's 0.1%, impacts the system a great deal.
Yeah, which then impacts us, the consumers, definitely.
Yes. Because the consumers don't have that budget flexibilities
Mm-hmm.
that the upper class have. So whatever little increase that is done in any sector of the economy cascades, and the impact is much.
Okay. And then also we saw recently as well that the government they announced that in Q2 trade surplus of Nigeria increased, and funnily enough, they said that it was largely from crude oil exports. I think that made up 70 something percent of this trade surplus. And from my understanding, trade surplus means that we exported more or we sold more as far as export is concerned. But now, I don't even understand because there's a lot we need to understand. Um, if we are selling more, and I'm not trying to go into the forex conversation, but if we are selling more, shouldn't that mean that we are making more? Shouldn't that be benefiting us?
If the data they give out says that we have a surplus, trade surplus in Q2, we are supposed to feel the impact.
As in, you mean positively now?
Yeah, positively. It's supposed to boost our foreign exchange. That means it should affect the exchange rate.
Okay, which means the exchange rate should come down, ideally.
Ideally. It's supposed to boost investor confidence in that people who want to invest will see it that it's a good time to come in.
Okay.
And we are not seeing all these things. So which means that it is for the man on the street, for most businesses, these are mere data.
And because we are not really even seeing the impact.
Yes. And then even in the oil sector, we are traditionally, crude oil has always been the driver for trade surplus in Nigeria. So it's not new.
Okay.
So the fact that they said that crude oil accounts for over 70%.
That's really what we export in the majority
Exactly.
as well.
But there's a danger here.
Mhm.
The danger is that we now tend to concentrate more on crude oil. And
Yeah,
this
and
leads to neglect
yeah,
of other
other
sectors.
sectors.
So that's what
Yeah.
is playing out. And that is what has played out all this while. And that is why we are where we are today.
But don't worry, we would have a bright future. We trust God. We believe that Nigeria will get there. Amen. Amen. So now I want us to now go into our real conversation for today. And to that conversation is I don't think there's anybody in Nigeria now that doesn't want to know about fuel and why it's expensive. Because fuel is expensive. And before, I think last year was when Tinubu came in now. I think last year, if I fuel my car, I remember vividly. There was one day I bought, I think, 10,000 and I removed 1,000 from it. I wanted to buy 10K, but I bought 9K instead. And it almost filled my tank. Then now 20K is half tank. And I think my major question is what is driving this increase? And I think it's a question that most Nigerians have. I understand to an extent, maybe I can say I understand the subsidy removal because okay, there was government was subsidizing fuel for us, so they used to pay an amount so that we would, or they used to sell at a lower amount so we will be able to afford it, and that the economy will be palatable for normal people like us. But my question is, why is there now another increase? Do you understand? And why is the increase so, what's the word? Monumental is a big word, but so large, from 500 to 800. And I think 2 weeks ago, we saw that the NNPC said that if they are buying from Dangote, it will now be 950 in Lagos and up to 1,000 in other states. So I think that's my major question. What is the driver of this increase? And I think is the question a lot of Nigerians have. Why does it increase so much?
I think first of all, I don't think 20,000 can get you half tank of any car at present. If I know the type of car you
because the fuel hadn't really finished, so it was a top up. Not even
if it's a top up, I
uh,
will understand. But 20,000 in this price situation cannot get you a half tank in a car. That's one. Then two, there are two basic reasons why we are witnessing what is going on in fuel pricing regime. The first one is the removal of subsidy, and the second one is the global oil pricing.
Okay.
Now, if we want to talk about removal of subsidy, the first question we need to ask ourselves is that what is subsidy, and when it comes to petroleum pricing, and who really introduced subsidy?
Okay.
And the answer is very simple. Subsidy is corruption. And who introduced subsidy in Nigeria Palace? Corruption.
Okay.
So if we have a very transparent system of measuring all these things, you find out that yes, even though we are paying subsidy, it won't be to the extent we are being told. So I had expected the current administration to do a lot of work before coming out to say subsidy is gone.
Yes.
It's not something that you wake up and say just like that.
A lot of people have the arguments that could have been better planned out.
Yes, and a lot of work should have been done. First of all, we look at the daily consumption of fuel. Between the year 2003 and 2015, we were consuming less than 21 million liters of fuel every day.
Wow.
But between 2015
And now,
and 2022, it peaked at 74 million liters of fuel
I
every
think you
day.
just said 12 and between something. What was the figure you said for 2015?
No, we were consuming 21 million liters.
So 20 to 70.
Where it peaked at 74
Okay.
million liters
That is,
every day.
that's a significant increase.
And there's no data to back it. So that
how do you know?
ultimately,
Can I ask how you know if there's no data to back it?
I mean, they only come out and tell us we consume so and so every day.
Okay.
And when I mean data, there should be empirical data. If the consumption increases, let's say from 27 million liters to maybe 30 million liters, we should have data to back it. We should know the increase in cars on the road, in vehicles in the road.
Okay.
We should know where are the high consumption points
I understand
and
what
all
you mean.
that.
So like just a very properly detailed this thing, so that when I see it, I can understand that this data is factual.
Exactly. So I think that is the first step that this current administration should have undertaken before removing subsidy, because they really needed to have accounted for every dime that is spent on subsidy before determining what is really the cost of subsidy. It is when we now find out the real cost of subsidy, we now decide whether
it's worth
removing or not. So enough work was not done on that. So the moment that was done without enough due diligence, the shock was much, and it impacted on a lot of sectors.
I bought bread 1/8 last week. I'm still not okay.
And you know, the second factor is that the timing. Well, there can never be a better timing for anything. But still, the timing, it came at the point when
there was an administration change.
Not just I'm now looking at the global perspective.
Okay.
The price of crude oil on the international market for now is like between $80 to $90 per barrel. And it's not coming down anytime soon.
Why do you say that so confidently?
Because looking at data, looking at projection, looking at the other things that make up, that help to determine the prices of international crude. We are talking about things like OPEC plus cuts. We are looking at the Russia-Ukraine war and all those supply shocks here and there. Between now and the end of the year, the price of crude oil should hover between $80-$90 per barrel. And if it goes higher than that, it will also impact the retail price that we are going to buy fuel here in Nigeria.
That impact should not be much. Should not be much.
Well, that's the reality.
Because it should not be much at all. Okay. Thank you so much. But now, like, I want us to talk about the implications. And what I mean now is, to be honest, all these decisions are made top level, and now they suffer. It really cascades down to, on one hand, businesses, which then affects consumers, if I'm correct. Anyway, you're the expert, so you tell us. But it affects businesses, because businesses are in business to make money. So by my by my calculation, businesses also would scale up their costs because of cost of production, cost of transportation. That increases as a result of increased operating costs, as a result of increased fuel price. So I think my question is, these implications, like, maybe touch a bit on these implications for the average consumer or for the average business. Okay, on one hand, for a business in Nigeria, and then for a consumer. I think so people also understand how this impacts them. Do you understand? So it's not just something we read in the paper. We see the tangible impact, but some people are not even able to feasibly or intelligently reconcile this to that. They just know this happened at the same time. Do you understand what I mean? So, like, how does the implication and the cause tie together?
I think the first thing that we should note is that fuel is not a luxury commodity.
Okay, wait, how do you mean?
It's what everybody needs.
Okay, I see what you
Yeah,
mean.
it's not a luxury. It's not something that you can say, okay, I don't want to do with it. Or rather, it's for the super rich.
Yeah, I understand the
It's
feeling.
something that everybody, practically everybody, needs for day-to-day survival. So if you don't need it directly, you need it indirectly. You might not be in a position to be buying fuel physically as a person, but you move around
So you are
with
impacted
transportation. So you
regardless.
are impacted. So once there is any increase in the cost of fuel, it impacts everybody, both the rich and the poor, and also the businesses. And we are in a situation whereby we don't have so much option when it comes to the use of fuel. We don't have so
Yeah, we
much
don't.
alternatives
Yes, like
when it
unlike
comes.
abroad where there are electric,
Yes, because
renewable energy
if there are good alternative trans
sources of
moving
energy.
around,
Yes,
then the impact might not be as much as it
it's
is
currently.
now. Yeah, and then even in the energy, uh, the use of solar, wind, all these are alternative sources of energy is not yet common. So a lot of businesses, especially small scale businesses, cannot do much without using fuel to power their businesses, especially against the backdrop where the supply of power is epileptic.
Yes.
So if we've had a situation whereby the renewable energy have been deepened enough such that people in rural areas and villages use that, you can say that, okay, they can use that for whatever they do and then maybe spend a little part of their income on now transportation. But now we'll find out that even before the increase, we found out that the masses have been so overburdened in that they don't have flexible budget. They are already squeezed.
Yes.
And this increase is squeezing everybody more.
I'm just thinking, cause and for, for me because we eat bread a lot in my family, and I was just remembering now as we were talking that I think bread was 300. I think bread was 300 January last year. I think that's how much I used to buy bread. So I would take, so if I take 1,000, then I would buy three. And it's just like when my parents, when my parents used to say, they'll say that, oh, then my aunt was even telling me recently that she used to take transport from, I think, Obalende to Yaba at whether 50 kobo, I'll 5 naira. And it's just ridiculous. And I think my question is that is there a threshold? Is there somewhere it will reach and it will stop? Because when this thing, like for example, with dollar, even though I'm not talking about forex, but with dollar, I remember when my I forgot who used to tell me that it can't pass 1,000, it will reach 1,000 and it will just dive. So does the same thing apply to fuel? Is there a place that it will reach? Okay, and maybe like can fuel ever be 150 again? I know I think they even increased it to 180, and all of us were screaming. But can it come down to 150 again? Is that even possible?
You see, the reality, we all have to face the reality in this country. Um, is in terms of removal of subsidy, was it important? Yes,
Yes.
it was important because there was a lot of distortion. But for me, the issue is that there was not enough homework before the removal of subsidy. And then in terms of the price coming down, um, I'm optimistic, but to what extent can it come down?
To what extent, actually?
Yes, the economy needs a lot of surgical operation
Hmm.
for it to really happen.
That is quite a term.
Yes, and when we talk about surgical operation, it's not just about focusing on fuel in isolation and all that. Um, we have to produce. We have to put in uh, policies and frameworks that can encourage manufacturers to produce. We have to increase our export. We have to look at non-oil export, how to boost it. Until we're able to do that and boost our foreign reserve, and which ultimately affects the foreign exchange, we may not see much reduction in the price of fuel.
Okay. And that is very eye-opening. I feel like I don't want to accept the truth because I think it still boils down to the same issue from listening to you. The same issue it always is. Consumption more than production. I think it still boils down to that issue. And talking about producing, I remember when Dangote launched this refinery, it was as if the whole Nigeria was happy. Me in my house, I was happy. I didn't understand like what the refinery was. I didn't even know what they were producing. I just thought that, oh, we now have a refinery. We are not going to be, the major problem they say with oil, Nigerian oil, this thing is that, oh, they pick up and we harvest crude here, export it, people refine for us, and we bring it back and start using as fuel, as natural gas and all that, as gas and all that. But now, when that refinery came, and I think this was the thinking of a lot of Nigerians, is that, oh, we can now refine here. Yeah. But I don't know how that is going because I think it's more than a year that that refinery was commissioned. And it's just recently that we see that, um, okay, maybe before we go into the particular subject, how instrumental can projects like that, because the Dangote Refinery and similar projects be instrumental in helping us revolutionize, will I say, our fuel price? I know you just mentioned production now. So I think, if I'm correct, it's going to positively, if done properly, impact. But now we hear that I think we saw a report a couple weeks ago as well from Dangote himself, saying how he's not allowed to sell to independent marketers, and he's only allowed to sell to NNPC. But in my thinking, that further impacts the price because that just elongates the value chain. Or am I wrong?
I think the first thing I have to say about Dangote Refinery is that it's a game changer.
Okay.
It's really
So, which means there's great potential there.
there's the potential is enormous. It's a game changer. 650,000 barrels per day. That's the biggest single train refinery in the world. So whether anybody agrees it or not, Dangote Refinery is a game changer. But for me, I don't want us to be looking at Dangote Refinery in isolation.
Okay.
But if you have to look at Dangote Refinery in isolation, yes, it can change a lot of things in this country, because at full capacity, And it's been projected that by the end of this year, 2024, Dangote Refinery will start producing at full capacity. And if that happens, it means that one, it will solve the problem of supply shocks that we've always had in fuel, retail fuel in Nigeria. Because it's one thing for fuel to be expensive. It's another thing for it to be available. Mm-hmm. So one, it will solve that issue of supply.
Yes.
Security of supply. There will be security of supply. Then you now look at other factors.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we are talking about what make up the pricing template for fuel, you start from the price of the feedstock, which is the crude, the refining cost, distribution cost. You talk about taxes. You now talk about the retail markup and all that. So in terms of why the price of Dangote fuel seems to be high at the moment, we don't have to just look at it and say Dangote is producing here in Nigeria, and so Dangote is a businessman.
Yes. And
then first of all, how did he get the crude that he processed? Most of the crude, he bought the crude from Brazil, from USA. So when you talk about that, those advantages that we should have had.
But I thought we are rich in crude in Nigeria.
You see, the oil market is a futures market.
Is it what?
It's a futures market.
How do you mean?
When I say it's a futures market, a lot of time you enter into a sales and purchase agreement for crude oil 5 years in advance.
Oh, wow.
So there could be that Dangote didn't do that. Maybe he hadn't secured some sales and purchase agreement like 5 years ago. So what we are hearing is that a lot of Nigeria crude are sold out.
Okay. Yes,
because the people in the upstream that produce the crude had entered into sales and purchase agreement where their crude will go to. And like in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they might not have surplus to supply to Dangote. That's one. And if he really wants to get those crude in country, it means that he has to pay premium for it, because those people we have to find a way around the contract they have with
the people they are currently selling to.
Yes. It's not that it's not doable, but it's doable, but it comes at a cost.
And he's a businessman.
So the fuel he's supplying to us right now, most of the crude came from Brazil and United States. So that dollar component is still there. The shipping component is still there. The insurance component, because when you are shipping these products, all these components are there. So those advantages of having the crude in country are not.
Yeah, we are missing out on all this.
Yeah, they were missing out. So in a way, it affected the pricing. But I feel that over time,
we will get over some of this.
Yes, when some of these distortions are and all these framework are settled, I think the impact will try to will really feel the impact of having an in-country refinery.
So we are basically hopeful that in the long term, this refinery will actually showcase its game-changing potential.
Yes, I'm very hopeful. And also, like I said earlier, we shouldn't be looking at the refinery sector and be isolating Dangote. Mind you, there are other refineries in Nigeria that are producing.
Okay. I don't think a lot of people are aware of that.
That is it. There are other refineries in Nigeria that are currently producing, and that there are more that will still come on stream but most of them are modular refineries. In Ibigwe, in Imo State, Walter Smith is doing 5,000 barrels per day.
Okay.
And it's sold
I'm
out.
familiar with
Yeah.
Walter Smith.
Yes, and it's sold out. And right now, they're moving to the phase 2, which will increase their capacity to 10,000
Barrels per day.
then 10,000 barrels per day.
Yeah.
Then we also have Aradel that is currently doing 11,000 barrels per day.
Okay.
We have other upcoming modular refineries and small scale refineries and all that. And I think what government can do is to encourage them, ensure they have the feedstock, because feedstock is still an issue. And then for producers like Walter Smith, Aradel, that are also into E&P, that are in the upstream already.
Yes.
Another thing government can do is to ensure that some of the marginal fields that are close to their refinery, they are given the first choice of refusal.
Because also to reduce transportation costs.
Yes, so that if they take over such marginal fields, the crude oil can go straight.
Yes, and it will also eventually become cheaper.
Exactly.
No worries. I'm hearing a lot, and while I'm not totally aloof of the situation in the country, so I know a bit. But I think this conversation today has really enlightened me, because it's now showing me that it's really will I say, fragmented system. It's not just one thing that leads to one thing. There's a lot, like we've mentioned the crude, we've mentioned transportation, we've mentioned policies and having a favorable business environment. We've mentioned so many things. In fact, till the level of the closeness of the crude oil place of extraction of the crude oil place, to where it's going to be produced. And I think that just really enlightens me. And I'm happy that we've had this conversation today. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I think we've learned much. And I think every one of our listeners would have learned a lot as well. So I'm really grateful for that. But thank you, everyone, for joining in today. Thank you for joining in on this episode. Nigeria is really at a crossroads. We're at a serious crossroads where we need to solve this fuel issue. And as we have seen today, while speaking with Mr. Frank, we have seen that there is potential. We are hopeful that one day things will be okay with refineries like the Dangote Refinery and the other two you mentioned. We are hopeful that the energy and fuel problems in Nigeria will be solved.
Can I make a last comment?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think one last comment I want to make is that at peak production, the very best we've gotten in this country in terms of crude oil production is 2.4 million barrels per day.
That's a lot.
But I'm going to shock you. 2.4 million barrels per day cannot sustain a country of 200 million people.
Oh, wow. So which means there's still more potential in the oil and gas industry?
No, the way I'm driving at is that we need to diversify this economy really fast.
Okay, so I see what you mean.
Yes.
So it's not a situation of more potential, it's a situation of scarcity.
Yeah, because we're all focusing on this oil. And we also have a situation where everybody is scrambling for the oil. And the unfortunate thing about this scramble is that just like everything in Nigeria, it's rigged. So it's not everybody that can get a piece of the action.
Yes.
It's for some people that the system has favored.
So and it's all sort that. Of monopolistic.
Exactly. So I wouldn't say monopolistic. We have a rigged system. It's not for the fittest. It's not for the brightest. It's not for.
It's not just to chance. Like
exactly.
It's not a fixed process in which that everybody has access.
So the earlier we diversify the economy, The earlier we understand that 2 million, as of now, we are doing about 1.4 million barrels per day. But even, yes, on average. So even at peak,
that's 2.4
2 million, 2.2, 2.4, even at that, it's not enough.
Able to sustain.
Yeah, it cannot sustain 200 million people. So the earlier we come to terms with that, the better.
Yes. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that we need to diversify our energy sources.
Not just energy sources.
Okay.
Other.
So, quick question as we wrap up. So now, from what you said, you are talking about diversification in terms of exports, or diversification in terms of the things we can use to propel, in the way fuel is something we use to propel the economy and propel businesses.
Yeah, when I talk about diversification, we should in the oil and gas, we should drive the economy with gas.
Okay.
Yeah, we should drive the economy with gas. We should push our oil, use the resources. The point I'm making is that the resources coming from oil should be reinvested in other aspects of the economy and grow the economy.
Okay. Got you. I understand now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. For more in-depth analysis on policy issues and key economic subjects, please visit our website at www.precisepoint.net. We've had an insightful conversation today, and I am looking at having you at the next podcast episode. Thank you so much, and bye, everyone.